So my secret weapon over the last 10 years, as soon as I found hill intervals, my game completely changed. But how do you use them to the best effect so that you can get the most out of not just your hill running and improving your fitness, but also get them working for you on the flat as well. So if you're training for a marathon or 5K, you've got that benefit from hill intervals. How can you do that? Now, when I got into running, I was doing everything on the flat because I just wanted to be fast at 5K and then 10K, and then I wanted to try a marathon. The typical way that most people fall into running. What I then got lucky in falling into was an uphill 50K race. And so I needed to become a better hill runner. And so a lot of my focus then became on hills. But what I realized was once I was doing those intervals and some other training sessions on the mountain or on a treadmill, that fed really well into my flat running and made me a more powerful runner, a stronger runner who was able to run faster on the flat as well. So what did they look like? So today was a perfect example. I'm back in Chiang Mai and I'm on my favorite mountain, Doi Step. It's 11 kilometers up to the temple, and then you can go up 18 kilometers all the way up to the palace. So it's a mountain that's average of 6.5%. So you can really push yourself. And that's the sort of gradient when people ask me about hill intervals or hill tempos or hill long runs, that's the sort of gradient you want, 5 to 7%. When it gets too steep, you're then putting a lot more on the Achilles, the soleus, and on the lower legs when it gets too steep. So I'd say it's sort of 10 to 15%, although it's sometimes nice to feel like you're powering up a very steep gradient, takes a lot more out of the lower legs, whereas 5 to 7%, you can really push it. And obviously, if you haven't got access to a mountain, which I didn't for the first few years when I was living in Sweden, I lived in a very flat place, I would use a treadmill. You can very easily put the treadmill on 5, 6, 7%, work through those and keep that as a consistent. But again, these intervals are the same whether you're working on a treadmill or you're working on a mountain like this. So today, the session was 20 times 2 minutes with 60 seconds rest in between. So here are 5 hill intervals that you can do if you've got access to a hill or a mountain, brilliant. If you've got access to a treadmill, again, great. You've got your drink right there in front of you. You can hydrate at the end of each interval. You've got your sports drink there, which you can practice taking in the right nutrition. That's often perfect. And often, like today when we were going up the mountain, you need somebody there who's helping you with drinks and stuff like that, unless you're going to carry a water bottle, which makes your running style a little bit different. So the treadmill is often the best bet. So the first session I would do is 4 times 5 minutes. So you're just focusing on keeping the effort consistent throughout each rep and throughout the entire session. You'll find it if you're new to hill running that it's difficult to judge a hill because there's nowhere to hide, there's no rest. You can quite easily slow down on the flat and it feels like you're still moving forward, a little bit like when you're riding the bicycle. You can stop pedaling and you'll still move forward. Not quite like that, but it's quite like it in terms of you can slow down, get your breath back and then go again. When you're going uphill, there's nothing for free. And that's why it's such a powerful session for mind and the mentality as well as your body. So that 4 times 5 minutes is you gradually implementing skill of uphill running, but with longer 5-minute reps. And so that should feel like, okay, you're engaging the glutes, you're warming up properly, you're getting to the point where you feel like you can use your body in the right way to move up the mountain. And just like today when I was warming up, I'm getting the glutes firing, I'm letting the hamstrings know that they're going to be doing a lot of work. The quads are also going to be picking up your leg. And so what you'll feel like if you've not done a lot of hill training before, or if you're completely new to hill running, that it's not just the glutes and the hamstrings that should fatigue, it will also be the quads if you're not used to that. And guess where we need our quads the most, especially in a half marathon towards the end, and definitely in a marathon. So very, very useful. Session number 2. So again, we're working with 20 minutes of volume, 5 times 4 minutes. So we're doing the same amount of volume, but we're bringing the rep length down so that naturally we can move faster up the hill. So we've done the 4 times 5 minutes, we've got used to running uphill. It's already, because it's then your second session, already you'll be used to, okay, I don't want to go out too fast on each rep because I can blow up. My heart rate might go too elevated and therefore I can't control each rep and the whole session. So that's a 4-minute interval. It's still a long interval. You still got to pace it and the entire session, but it's more manageable because you've got more rest in between, as well as 5-minute rests instead of just 4-minute rests, but you're able to go faster. Session number 3, 7 times 3 minutes. So 21 minutes of volume, so 5% extra than your 20 minutes, but you've got 60 seconds rest in between and the rep length is brought to 3 minutes. So all of a sudden, over the course of 2 or 3 weeks, we've brought the rep length down from 5 minutes to 3 minutes, almost halved it, brought it back down by 40%. That's a big difference in the amount of effort that we can put in for 3 minutes versus the amount of effort that we could put in for 5 minutes. Big difference. And so what that's going to mean, if you're using a mountain, and like today you're using exactly the same mountain, so you can test yourself over the weeks, and that's why it's so perfect. That's why I love coming here, and that's why I love using the mountain. But it's also the same for me on a treadmill because it keeps consistent. 6% will be 6% if you're on the same treadmill, and so you can really push yourself and see how much pace or how much ground can you cover in that 3 minutes versus what you could cover in the 5 minutes. The chances are that you can go a lot faster for the 3-minute interval. So for the 7 times 3 minute, you've got 7 minutes rest, 60 seconds rest in between. So a lot more rest for the 21 minutes of volume versus the 20 minutes of volume, but we're able to push much more, which means that we're able to cover more ground. Session number 4. I love this session, and I was just doing a version of it right now on the mountain. And again, there's nowhere to hide. It's 10 times 2 minutes with 60 seconds rest in between. 30 minutes, the total session, but 20 minutes of hard work. 10 minutes rest in between where you're focusing on bringing the heart rate from high to low by controlling the breathing. Not easy to do, especially when you're going into the red, especially when you're going into zone 3, zone 4, and even zone 5 during a short 2-minute interval. So you're able to push more, even more than the 3 minute. You're bringing the rep length down by 50%, so you're able to push more, and within that 20-minute of volume, you're able to cover more ground and within each individual rep. But focus on pacing the entire session. The more reps you've got to do, typically, the harder it is to pace each individual rep and the entire session. But if you can get used to that, these intervals are going to cross into you being able to pace a race much easier, whether that's a 5K or 10K, half marathon, marathon, and even an ultra marathon, because you know what it feels like in that second half of an interval session. You know what it feels like in that final quarter where you've got to dig in, and maybe after 2 or 3 of these sessions, you'll realize not to set off too quick in the beginning because you need to leave something for later so it's consistent. And what the session will look like when you look later at your Garmin is you want some nice mountains and troughs with your heart rate data. So you want to go up into zone 3, zone 4 during the rep, but then also recover really well. What you'll find in the beginning is, and I'll try to paint you a better diagram of this, is naturally the effort is getting harder and harder as the session goes on. So the heart rate is going up and it's not coming down as it should during those 1-minute rest in between. And therefore we need to monitor that over time, because what we're looking for is consistency in the mountains, in the peak of the mountain, but also in the valley, in your ability to recover in between intervals. Session number 5. Now, this is one of the hardest sessions, whether you do this on the flat or whether you do it on the mountain, but it's especially hard when you do it on the mountain or on an incline on the treadmill. 20 times 1 minute with 1 minute rest in between. So 40 minutes total session, plus your warm up and cool down. 20 minutes of that is hard work, 20 minutes recovery. And again, you're really able to put in the effort because they're only 1 minute reps. And just a few weeks ago, you were doing 5-minute reps and 4-minute reps, then 3-minute reps. Those 1 minutes feel like you're a completely different runner because you're able to put in a lot more effort, because you realize you've got 60 seconds hard and then you've got 60 seconds recovery. And again, over the weeks and months and years, you'll see that heart rate graph getting to a point where you're really able to put in the effort. So you're able to get into zone 4, zone 5 for these 1 minute intervals, but then you're able to recover super efficiently during that 60 seconds rest and bring your heart rate back into ideally zone 1, or that could look like zone 2, especially today when it was hot and humid. That's where I was bringing it back to during 2 minute intervals. So yeah, 20 times 1 minute, great session, nowhere to hide, especially when you're doing that on an incline, on a treadmill, or on the mountain. So there you go. Those are great sessions for you to do and gradually bring the pace up so that you're able to put more effort in week after week. It's the consistency, and it's doing that once per week. It's an interval session. It's a hill interval session, and so that would go in your interval within the week. When runners get into running for the first time, or when they revisit running after some years away, they'll often sort of either go into parkrun or 5K and then move up in distance. Some people will jump straight into the marathon. And what they will want to do is they'll know that they need to increase their endurance because they want to be able to survive the distance. They want to be able to get to the finish line. They will progressively add more to their long run, and maybe they'll think about speed and they'll do some speed work over the ground, maybe some 400 meter reps, 800 meter reps. That's a typical session, and a lot of people will benefit from that. Often what we forget is something like hills can be the thing that takes you onto the next level. It's gonna build more powerful glutes and hamstrings, but it's going to improve your running economy as well, make you powerful where it counts, and because you need to propel yourself up the mountain in exactly the way you need to propel yourself over the ground when you're running fast. Often with runners, what I see is they're able to last the distance, but they've not got that top end speed. They've not got the power because they don't develop that because they just want to finish the race, or they've got a target in place like a sub 3 hour marathon. They want to get to the end, and therefore they know they need to get comfortable at running 4 minutes 15 per kilometer. And that's what they focus on. If you put something in there like hills, and definitely hill intervals and extended hill intervals, can completely change your game. Good luck, and let me know, do you already put hills into your schedule, or is it something that you'd like to try?